You know what I find fascinating? A lot of people in the tech space think the biggest hurdle to building a great startup is the technology. They think if the app works and the code is clean, they've won the battle. But it isn't. The absolute hardest thing in business is convincing a human being to change a behavior that they have been practicing for like a decade. Because once we as humans decide that a thing is weird or a bit uncomfortable, or just not for people like us, look, good luck trying to change our minds. Absolutely no amount of logic works. And that's exactly what brought me to a business I've been following closely lately. It's called RideShareng. Now, full disclosure, I actually know the founder. We've talked about his vision. And honestly, I love what he's trying to build. So, for those who don't know the premise, it's smart. So, let's say you're driving somewhere and you've got empty seats in your car. Why not let other people who are heading in that same exact direction hop in, share the ride, and split the cost? Standard carpooling. Now, on paper, it's brilliant. You're looking at less fuel expense for the driver, fewer cars clogging up the roads, less traffic for everyone, a bit of extra income, and cheaper transit for the passenger. Literally, everybody wins. But looking at some of the conversations that he has been posting online lately, it's clear that the bottleneck isn't the math or the technology. He has built a great platform. The real bottleneck is the psychology of the market. And it got me thinking about a fascinating strategic puzzle that a lot of founders face. The question now is, do successful behavior changing businesses win by persuading everyone at once or by finding the right community and letting the behavior spread from there? The CEO of RideShare NG made a post recently that I thought was incredibly spot on, but it also exposed the tall hill that he and his team have to climb. So he was pointing out the reality of the Nigerian commuter, how someone would genuinely rather spend 15,000 naira driving alone in their car just to protect their status rather than spend 3,000 naira sharing a ride with someone going to the exact same place. And look, he's 100% right about the behavior. But where we loop back into the core question of does it make sense is how a business responds to that reality. Because at the end of the day, people don't make daily decisions based purely on economics. We make decisions based on identity. Like, look at it this way. Imagine you're a banker at Zenith Bank or a corporate lawyer or maybe an HR manager at BUA Group. You've worked hard, you drive your own car to work every day. You don't wake up in the morning and see yourself as a driver looking for random passengers. And on the flip side, you don't see yourself as someone squeezing into a stranger's vehicle with three random people every morning. Now we can sit back and say, oh, that's just pride talking. And maybe it is, but people feel how they feel. And as builders, we don't get paid for arguing with reality. We get paid for understanding reality. So the real strategic question, and the question I'm putting to you guys today, is about the go to market approach. Now, should Rideshare NG keep targeting the mass market from day one, or should they back up and start with a much smaller, specific group of people who already feel socially comfortable sharing rides with each other? So let's take a look at how those two paths play out. Now, if they stick with the current path, that's the mass market approach, The logic is obvious. Nigeria has millions of commuters, millions of drivers, millions of empty seats. You go after everyone because if you get enough people on board, the network effect kicks in. The platform becomes massive and you don't artificially limit your growth from the start. That is the ultimate dream. But the friction here is massive. You're asking someone who has spent 10 years carefully curating their social image and driving alone to suddenly make a giant psychological leap overnight. And human beings are notoriously bad at doing that. Because let's be real for a second. The drivers who are already perfectly fine with carrying strangers for extra fuel money, they don't need an app to do that. They already know how to pull up at a bus stop, how to call out their destination, and just fill their cars. The real challenge and the real prize for rideshare NG, in my opinion, isn't reaching the people who are already doing it manually. It's convincing the people who find it entirely uncomfortable to make the mental switch. But what if they tried a start premium approach instead? What if instead of targeting the entire city, they targeted a very specific tribe, a group of people who already share a common denominator? Now, my mind immediately goes to airport routes. Think about it. Most people heading to the airport to take a flight have already spent serious money on their travel. The people on that route are mostly professionals, business owners, corporate workers, consultants, etc. They already move in similar social circles. So suddenly, if I use the app for an airport run, the psychology completely flips. I'm no longer thinking I'm carrying random passengers to make fuel money. I'm thinking I'm sharing a ride with another professional who happens to be catching a flight. It's the exact same physical activity, but a totally different mental framing. And framing is everything. If you look back at business history, so many massive companies started exactly like this. Facebook didn't start with everyone, it started with Ivy League universities. LinkedIn started strictly with professionals. Even Uber initially felt like a premium black car service before it became a mainstream utility. They didn't try to change the whole world at once. They just made a behavior feel normal inside a small trusted community first and then let it spread outward. If you have heard the old tale about the frog in the pot, right? If you take a frog and drop it into a pot of boiling water, it's going to notice the shock immediately and drop straight out. To me, that is the mass market approach. You're asking people to jump into a boiling hot brand new behavior, and their instinct is to resist or to stay away. But if you put that same frog into a pot of room temperature water and you slowly turn up the heat, the frog stays. It adjusts. It doesn't even realize the environment is changing until it is already cooked. That is what the start premium strategy is. You don't ask people to go from I only drive alone to I'm opening my doors to everyone. That is the boiling water. Instead, you start at room temperature. You ask them, hey, would you share a ride with a fellow traveler? Then, once that feels normal, you turn up the heat. Will you share a ride with a professional commuting to Victoria Island, for example? And gradually, before anyone realizes it, the behavior has changed. The leap becomes a series of tiny, comfortable steps until the new normal is actually boiling hot. But everyone is already in the pot. Now, let's be frank. The premium first route isn't perfect either. And I'm sure the rideshare team has debated this. It carries its own risk. You might end up building something that only works for a tiny elite niche. You might never get the scale you need to make the broader economics work. And instead of sparking a transportation revolution, you just end up as a boutique airport shuttle service. And that's the trap. Correcting a wrong initial image later on can actually take way more work than the mass market approach ever would. It can dig a psychological hole that the brand might never be able to climb out of. Because at the end of the day, undoing a perception in people's minds is several times harder than building a new one from scratch. So, if I'm weighing these two options from a purely behavioral standpoint, the mass market strategy definitely has the bigger ultimate payoff if it works. But the premium first strategy has a much higher probability of actually shifting human habit. Because at the end of the day, we don't adopt new habits because the math makes sense. We adopt them because we see people like us doing them and the resistance just starts to melt away. So I want to put this to you guys. Which way would you steer the ship if you are at the helm of it? Are you team A, go all in on the mass market, building for scale, and betting that economic reality will eventually force people to drop the pride? Or are you team B, starting with a specific premium tribe, building social acceptance first, and then expanding outward to the masses later? Let me know what you think in the comments. Because to me, this isn't a battle between transport and technology. It's a brilliant chess match between economics and human psychology. And honestly, my money is usually on psychology.